here to join us, a practical approach to this is almost in the realm of economic esoterics. Jeff Yastine, who is the chief editorial director at Newsmax Financial Newsletters.
It's mission impossible, I think.
Yeah. How do you define it, first of all?
Right.
But it seems to be a tough thing. What do you make of those numbers?
I think the article, the USA Today article, it does a good job, and I think a fair job of trying to define it. But what I would say is just that the idea of the American dream is just that. It's an idea, it's something we aspire to, but achieving it depends on your perspective and your point of view, and whether it's easier or harder to achieve it now. I don't know whether we can really say necessarily. I think it is in many ways tougher. If we look at the economy, there's a lot of jobs that when you get them, they're not paying very much. So trying to, like this article was, I think they were saying the median number for a new home was when
the median was about $275,000.
Exactly.
Right.
For median housing expenses, it's a mortgage and all that. But of course, the other part of it is they were computing the mortgage at like a 4% 30-year, which is pretty good. And if you had a mortgage in the 80s, your mortgage was 8%, 9%. 10%. If you were coming out of college in the early 80s, your car loan was 15%. And nowadays that's more like what you pay on your credit card balance if you carry one. Which I don't.
And how has the housing market changed that?
I think the housing market has changed that in two ways. One, the financing, of course, has gotten cheaper, and that's all thanks to the Federal Reserve.
But it's more difficult.
It is more difficult in terms of getting a loan, but right. even now, that is actually starting to change. I was just reading something, and if you Google the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times in the last 2-3 weeks, last month, you'll see that actually banks are starting to loosen up their credit standards and their loan standards. So I don't think we're getting quite to the point where we were in 2005, 2006, where if you wanted a loan and you could fog a mirror, that you would get one, right?
Right.
We're not quite to that level yet. But again, going back to the Federal Reserve, which drives so much for better, for worse in our economy, a lot of this is due to what they're doing.
And we talk about the Fed and this policy with money. Does that mean that last week's record highs on the stock market and the S&P 500, is that a mirage? Because in terms of real worth, is the stock market reflective of these historical highs they had last week?
I don't think it's a mirage, but I think it's become one of those situations where we're all just looking at the Fed saying, okay, Fed, what are you going to do next? And if people perceive that the Fed, led by Janet Yellen now, is going to start raising rates, because when the economy starts heating up, as it appears to be doing, that's the stock market's next reaction. Okay, when are rates going to go higher, or when is the stimulus going to finally be pulled completely out of the equation? Back in and that I think is where the stock market is going to go next. In December, the Fed was buying $80 billion a month in mortgage-backed securities and treasuries. That was their effort to stimulate the economy, quantitative easing. Since December, they've been walking that back time after time. So now I think it's down to like $35 billion a month that they're buying. Probably by September, October, they will have zero stimulus. And what I believe the stock market's going to start asking is, all right, can we survive? Can profits be what they are without that stimulus? And then if they start asking that question, I worry about whether the stock market can continue at these levels.
And speaking of stimulus, let's talk about jobs. Unemployment in the new job report shows that over 280,000 jobs were added to the U.S. economy. What are your thoughts on that? Are we seeing a recovery?
I think we are. I think the data shows it. But again, it goes back to the Federal Reserve. I hate to keep kind of going back to this kind of circular argument, but in many ways it's reflective on that. If they can keep interest rates low, I think you could continue to see more revving up of the economy. But the question is, as the market starts to perceive that the Fed is not going to be as easy with their monetary stimulus, then everything else sort of Go ahead.
But
Jay.
but with jobless numbers too, we're into a situation that the Fed may deal with the value of money in terms of interest rates and setting our value of currency by bureaucratic fiat now based what's going on. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or whoever's handling the employment numbers, you got a curious situation, because if you're out of work and not looking for work, you cease to be part of that measurement,
Right,
correct?
you drop off of the rolls.
And our labor participation rate right now is what, the lowest in how many years?
I believe so, but I think we're at the point now where we can't continue to argue about the data. We've seen that sort of thing before coming out of other recessions, where you do have situations, people get frustrated, they leave the workforce. But that doesn't seem to have impacted the economy long term in the past. Of course, that's the big question now. Is this somehow a change from previous recoveries of recessions?
Well, it's good to have a hopeful note, even though I may have my own cynicism about just how we're measuring unemployment. Our economy is so big, and still we're so free, that there are a lot of people out there working hard, doing well. I understand there's a new book that addresses many practical financial issues for investors entitled The Warren Buffett's Next Door, written by Matthew Schifrin. What about that book?
Yeah, really interesting book, because what it's doing is it's showing, in the course of the author, showing how ordinary people who are very interested in the stock market can achieve above market returns the same way that Warren Buffett has, by really looking at certain things and following certain principles regarding having an edge, having superior knowledge about a particular area, looking for places where everybody else has not yet seen the opportunity.
And if you're looking for the book, a good place to find it is the website FIR411.com.
A lot of people are going to be checking that out right now.
Chef Yastine, as always, we appreciate your help. Scout hand clasp there with the left hand closest to the heart. And means I'm right brain, does it not? We appreciate that. That's what Jeff's take. Do you believe what Jeff is saying about unemployment numbers? Why don't you tweet us your thoughts on that at Newsmax TV, hashtag America's Forum. There's also email, our address, connect@newsmaxtv.com. And don't forget Facebook. You'll see our faces again following this break.